There is a reason only a small fraction of people ever rise to the top. A reason only the few ever gain influence, accumulate wealth, shape industry, or live lives of purpose and freedom. The reason is not found in luck, birthright, or talent. It is found in thought, in attitude, in discipline, and in decision. The 1% do not live by accident. They do not drift. They do not wait for permission, nor do they operate on impulse. They are not spectators of life. They are creators of it. They obey the same laws available to all, but they do not interpret those laws with emotion or passivity. They apply them with absolute conviction. What separates them from the rest is not access, but alignment. They have aligned their thoughts with their purpose, their habits with their aim, and their actions with their beliefs. The mind, when focused and governed by definiteness of purpose, becomes the tool by which all things are made possible. The average man allows his mind to drift. He lets circumstance dictate thought. He permits emotion to set the tone for each day. But the one who acts like the 1% disciplines his thinking. He holds every thought to the standard of his vision. The masses think reactively. They consume noise, follow trends, and allow opinion to shape their direction. The 1% think proactively. They create silence. They guard input. They know that the mind is fertile ground and only the most selective seeds are worthy of planting. Desire is not enough. The world is filled with those who wish, those who say, those who hope. But hope without discipline is fantasy. The 1% take desire and transmute it into action, and action into result. They do not wait for emotion to carry them. They operate on decision. They have made success non-negotiable. Success is not a matter of luck or condition. It is a matter of law. The law says, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. But belief is not passive. Belief is built. It is constructed through repetition, through persistence, through the habit of finishing what is started. The majority start strong and quit quickly. They begin with enthusiasm and end in excuse. But those who act like the 1% follow through, not because it is easy, but because they have decided that they must. The habit of completion is sacred. Once established, it reinforces identity, builds confidence, and commands attention. Understand this well. The world responds to those who carry conviction. Conviction cannot be faked. It is the result of alignment, mental, emotional, physical, and alignment is the result of principle. The 1% live by principle, not by preference. They act on standards, not on feelings. They understand that emotion is a poor leader. It changes with the wind. But principle is constant. Principle is fixed. It becomes the compass by which one navigates storms. Every act, every habit, every word spoken is either in service of your purpose or in defiance of it. There is no neutral. The 1% are ruthless with this understanding. They are not casual. They are not sometimes committed. They are always building, always protecting, always sharpening. They protect their time, for they understand it is the currency of life. Every moment spent is either an investment or a cost. They do not waste hours in idleness, for they know that lost time is unrecoverable. Their calendars reflect their mission. Their routines are forged in intention. To act like the 1% is to become master of one's day, one's hour, one's minute. To waste nothing. To let no decision go unmeasured. To allow no task to remain half done. They rise with purpose, not because they are motivated, but because they are loyal to themselves, to their vision, to the future they have already seen in their minds. The 1% are not smarter, they are more consistent. Not louder, they are more prepared. Not luckier, they are more directed. The path is not easier for them. They simply choose not to stray from it. They repeat the fundamentals until mastery is the only outcome. The average grow bored with repetition. They want something new, something stimulating. But mastery lives in the mundane. It lives in the dull, repeated, invisible labor that few are willing to endure. And that is the secret: endurance. To act like the 1% is to endure without applause, to remain loyal when no one is watching, to do the right thing not once but until it becomes your nature. Success is the result of quiet persistence, not one day of greatness, but 1,000 days of consistency, of returning to the mission with full attention and full effort. You must understand that the world rewards excellence, not effort. Effort is entry level, but excellence that is built through precision, through reflection, through removing what no longer serves and doubling down on what does. The 1% do not try to do more. They try to do less but better. They do not clutter their time with endless projects. They commit to fewer aims and pursue them with absolute intensity. If something does not serve the goal, it is eliminated. If someone does not respect the standard, they are removed. If a habit does not align with the identity, it is replaced. This level of discipline is not harsh, it is necessary. It is not personal, it is principled. To rise above the masses, you must think differently, speak differently, act differently. You must stop measuring progress by speed and begin measuring it by depth. The masses want speed, the elite want substance. The 1% are willing to go slow if it means going right. They study themselves. They track their progress. They reflect, review, and refine. They treat life like a laboratory, not a lottery. They are not guessing. They are engineering. They know that success is not a moment, but a method, a repeatable way of thinking, of living, of operating. And they commit to that method with reverence. There is no escape from the law of cause and effect. What you sow, you reap. What you tolerate, you repeat. What you repeat, you become. And so the 1% sow discipline over and over. They tolerate nothing that violates their standard. And they repeat only what reinforces their identity. Their identity is not built in public, it is forged in private. In the quiet hour, in the unseen decision, in the daily choice to live by the higher law. You must decide, will you act like the many or the few? Will you chase what feels good now or build what feels right forever? Will you entertain weakness or eliminate it? To act like the 1% is not to be extreme, it is to be deliberate. Deliberate with thought, deliberate with energy, deliberate with direction. And when you become deliberate, you become dangerous, not to others, but to the limitations that once ruled you. A focused, deliberate, disciplined individual is the most powerful force on earth, not because he moves quickly, but because he moves correctly. The world is moved not by noise, but by precision, not by opinion, but by principle, not by frenzy, but by focus. And that, above all, is what the 1% have mastered. The ability to return their mind again and again to the one thing that matters most. When distractions rise, they return to their aim. When delay tempts, they return to their plan. When resistance screams, they return to their values. That is the way. The way of the builder, the way of the few, the way of the one who has chosen not to conform but to lead. To act like the 1% is not to wait for direction. It is to become the direction. And when you do, when you no longer look outside for confirmation, when your standards rise above the noise, when your life becomes a reflection of inner clarity, the world begins to bend. Not because you chased it, but because you commanded yourself. And that command, once mastered, brings everything else into its rightful order. There is a structure to greatness, and it is not mysterious. It is exact. It is mathematical. The 1% understand this. They live by rhythm. They understand that success is not an event, but a cadence, an unbroken chain of intentional thoughts, decisions, and disciplined actions. There is no magic in their outcomes, only mastery in their thinking. They begin with clarity, not general ideas, not loose dreams, but clarity. They define exactly what they want, and then they think, speak, and act in harmony with that definition. This is the power of definiteness of purpose. Without it, energy is wasted. With it, energy is focused into results. When a man defines his purpose, he is no longer pulled by every new opportunity. He is no longer ruled by emotion. He becomes rooted in direction. His days are no longer filled with movement, they are filled with momentum. And what is momentum but focused energy repeated over time? The 1% don't wait for momentum, they manufacture it. They generate it through daily obedience to their plan, regardless of mood, regardless of noise. Their goals are not public decoration, they are private contracts. Contracts they intend to fulfill not once but continually as a reflection of who they are becoming. There is no space for hesitation in their world. Not because they are reckless, but because they understand that hesitation is the seed of doubt. And doubt, once allowed, multiplies. So they act, not impulsively, but decisively, with confidence rooted in preparation, in principle, and in pattern. Their lives are governed by pattern. They do not chase chaos. They design structure. They know that habits shape identity, and identity shapes results. They wake up with reason. They move with sequence. They build without emotion clouding the aim. There is no confusion in their minds about who they are, because they tell themselves who they are every day, through repetition, through affirmation, through behavior. The subconscious mind accepts repetition as truth. The 1% repeat what aligns with power, and power begins to express itself through them. You become what you think about, but only if you think about it long enough and with enough emotional fuel for it to take root. So they think, they visualize, they write, they affirm. Not because it feels good, but because it works. They are willing to do what others consider excessive because they are after results others will never reach. They do not concern themselves with balance in the conventional sense. They pursue harmony, harmony between mind, body, direction, and behavior. They do not seek escape from effort. They seek effort because they know effort, when properly directed, produces value. And value creates influence, freedom, and legacy. They do not fear failure because they understand its role. Failure, when interpreted correctly, becomes the hand of refinement. It shows what to correct. It offers feedback, and the 1% are never offended by feedback. They are shaped by it. They are teachable. They are observant. They are students of their own system. They reflect not once a year, but constantly. They review results. They track habits. They learn from every outcome. They do not run from truth, they invite it, because only through truth can alignment be perfected. Truth is not the enemy of success. It is the foundation of it. The average man hides from his own inconsistencies, but those who rise to the top face them and fix them. There is no pride in pretending. There is power in recalibrating. This is the mindset of the 1%. Their mind is not a place for chaos. It is a laboratory, a command center, a temple. They do not allow doubt to live there, because every thought tolerated becomes a belief. Every belief allowed becomes identity, and identity is the driver of action. If you believe you are strong, you act with strength. If you believe you are average, you act accordingly. So they build belief brick by brick through repetition, through principle, through behavior that reflects the version of themselves they have already seen. They are not waiting to become someone. They have decided who they are, and everything they do is evidence of that decision. The 1% are not surprised by their success because they rehearsed it long before it was visible. They saw it. They affirmed it. They committed to it. They are not arrogant. They are aligned. They are not boastful. They are certain. They are not reckless. They are prepared. Certainty is born from clarity, and clarity is the reward of solitude. They spend time alone, not in loneliness, but in design. In that space, they refine their vision. They silence the noise. They reconnect with their purpose. Noise is the great enemy of the mind. It splits focus. It weakens intention. It scatters thought. The 1% know this. That is why they protect their environment. They do not entertain weak conversation. They do not waste energy on trivial conflict. They do not tolerate chaos in their proximity. They guard the gates of the mind with discipline. They understand that a single distraction, if repeated, becomes a habit, and a habit once established becomes difficult to undo. So they are ruthless about what they allow. This ruthlessness is not harshness toward others. It is reverence for the mission. They know that time is finite and attention is sacred. So they move with intention, they speak with precision, and they act with finality. There is no room in their life for smallness, small thoughts, small excuses, small games. They are not here to entertain the world's opinions. They are here to express the vision placed within them. And that vision is not soft. It demands strength. It demands solitude. It demands sacrifice. The 1% do not shy away from sacrifice. They embrace it because they know you cannot rise without releasing. Release the habits that no longer serve. Release the relationships that dilute your direction. Release the voices that question your pace, your style, your intensity. There will always be those who misunderstand focus. Let them. You are not here to be understood. You are here to build. Let your results become the explanation. Let your consistency be your argument. Let your standards speak so loudly that no rebuttal is necessary. The world does not reward those who explain. It rewards those who execute. Those who act not once but daily with clarity and consistency. This is what it means to act like the 1%. To walk in alignment before the world applauds. To build before anyone believes. To maintain discipline in silence. To pursue excellence when no one is watching. And to stay loyal, not to trends, not to applause, not to comfort, but to vision. That loyalty is what separates the few from the many. Because most will break at the first sign of difficulty. But the 1% do not break. They adapt. They pivot when necessary. They pause only to recalibrate. But they never quit. They never allow temporary defeat to become permanent identity. They do not allow failure to stain their belief. They interpret every experience in service of their aim. Even resistance becomes fuel. Even rejection becomes redirection. Every closed door simply refines the path forward. This is what it means to think with discipline, to act with vision, to move with integrity. When the internal is aligned, the external must follow. That is law. And those who understand the law of thought, the law of belief, and the law of cause and effect, those who live by these laws without deviation, inevitably rise. Because the world does not choose who wins. It responds to who decides. And decision is not a one-time act. It is a daily agreement, a sacred contract between who you are now and who you have chosen to become. You must sign that contract with your thoughts, your habits, and your discipline. And once signed, never violated. This is the way of the 1%, and it can be yours. The individual who acts like the 1% walks through life with quiet certainty, not because all things are under control, but because one thing is the self. This is the most critical dominion. The man who masters his mind has no need to conquer others. His influence is a byproduct of inner command. To become the 1% in any field, in any era, begins not with imitation, but with principle. Principle governs the long arc of success. Trends fade, markets shift, emotions rise and fall, but principle endures. And what are the governing principles of the 1%? Discipline, above all. Not discipline in occasional sprints, but in long, uninterrupted seasons of committed effort. Discipline not rooted in pain or punishment, but in clarity of aim. The 1% do not view discipline as restriction. They see it as alignment. They choose not to waste their gifts. They choose to act in harmony with their greatest potential. The man who practices discipline over desire earns what others only wish for. The 1% also live by the principle of responsibility. They blame no one. They assign no excuses. They understand that to give away responsibility is to give away power, and the 1% guard their power with vigilance. They do not wait for conditions to be perfect. They act within imperfect conditions and bend those conditions through persistent effort. They never wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. Responsibility transforms the victim into the victor, and with that transformation comes clarity. It is clarity that produces action, and action, repeated in the right direction, produces momentum. With momentum, what once seemed difficult becomes standard. What once seemed overwhelming becomes routine. The 1% reach this point not by force, but by repetition. They make the difficult familiar. They make the impossible predictable. They understand that success is a system, not a surprise. Systems are the product of deliberate design. The 1% do not live by accident. They engineer their mornings. They structure their evenings. They define their inputs. They choose their environments. Success does not come to the man who waits. It is built by the man who decides. And once decided, never again negotiates. Negotiation is the death of progress. The 1% remove negotiation from the equation. They know that if the mind is left with a vote, it will always vote for comfort. So they cast the vote before the moment arrives. They prepare the response before the excuse presents itself. Discipline is not forged in the moment, it is prepared in advance. So they think ahead. They rehearse their responses. They visualize the result. They anticipate their weakness, and they install systems to counteract it. This is why the 1% appear unshaken. It is not that they feel no resistance, it is that they plan for it. They do not rely on willpower, they rely on structure. They do not wait to feel ready, they act as if readiness is the reward for movement. And it is. Because once in motion, the mind follows, and the energy required to begin is always greater than the energy needed to continue. The 1% remove friction. They simplify. They eliminate decisions. They reduce clutter. They know that clutter is the enemy of clarity, and clarity is what moves the needle. Clarity in thought. Clarity in language. Clarity in execution. They do not overcomplicate. They refine. They edit. They subtract until only the essential remains. They understand that mastery is not addition, it is elimination. To act like the 1% is to stop trying to do everything and instead do one thing with everything. With attention, with excellence, with full presence. Presence is a rare quality. It is the signal of power. The man who is fully present, fully engaged in thought and in action, is a rare force. He listens deeply. He observes what others miss. He responds with accuracy. He commands respect without demand. This level of presence cannot be faked. It comes from the elimination of distraction, from the cultivation of solitude, from the discipline of returning one's mind to the moment again and again. The 1% practice this, not once, but constantly. They do not pretend to be busy. They aim to be productive. They do not seek to appear powerful. They practice power at the root. And that root is always internal. It is thought, controlled thought, directed thought, intentional thought. The mind, when mastered, becomes a transmitter. It begins to shape outer circumstances by the clarity and frequency of inner belief. Belief is not accidental. It is installed. The 1% speak with conviction because they have rehearsed belief. They have reminded the mind every day what it must hold true. They do not allow thoughts to run wild. They choose their thoughts like a general chooses his soldiers. No fear is allowed to stay. No weakness is permitted to linger. Every thought must serve the mission. And this is no exaggeration. The thoughts repeated become the blueprint of the future. The 1% think with structure. They think on paper. They plan. They review. They correct. They do not rely on memory. They capture. They do not drift. They direct. Direction is the currency of influence. The world follows those who walk with unwavering direction. And that direction is not shouted. It is lived. It is evident in behavior, in tone, in gaze, in energy. The 1% carry an energy not born from arrogance, but from alignment. That alignment is felt. It is the result of a life governed by principle, not pressure. A life of self-authorization. They do not wait for rewards, they work from reward. They carry themselves as if the result is already theirs. Not because of ego, but because of clarity. They have already seen the vision, already chosen the path, already counted the cost. And they pay the price, gladly. The price of discipline, the price of early mornings, the price of discomfort, the price of being misunderstood. The 1% are not immune to judgment. They are indifferent to it. They do not require applause to validate what they know is true. They are not chasing recognition. They are fulfilling responsibility. Their responsibility is to the gift they have been given, the vision they have received, the standard they have chosen to uphold. They live not to impress, but to express what is real within them. This is the essence of self-mastery. The path of the 1% is not about control over others, it is control over self. Complete dominion of thought, of response, of decision. That dominion builds trust, first with the self, then with the world. Trust creates consistency, and consistency creates compound results. Day after day, action upon action, brick upon brick, the outside sees success. The inside knows discipline. The outside sees confidence. The inside knows commitment. The outside sees strength. The inside knows structure. And now you know the path. It is not reserved for a select few. It is simply walked by few. Because few are willing to pay the price. Few are willing to delay gratification. Few are willing to stay the course when the outcome is not yet visible. But if you will focus your mind, if you will organize your day, if you will filter your habits, audit your thoughts, and align your behavior to a higher standard, you too will rise. Not by chance, not by force, but by law. The law of belief, the law of decision, the law of cause and effect, and above all, the law of focus. Think like the 1%. Act like the 1%. Discipline your mind. Govern your behavior. Own your direction. And success will be yours. Not someday, not perhaps, not eventually, but inevitably.